My name is Roxy, and I was 28 when something inside me finally snapped. Loudly, painfully, like the crunch of a bone breaking. And I realized that there are families that suck you dry, quietly and methodically, until all that's left is a thin, fragile shell, ringing with emptiness. I was working as a programmer in Austin, making decent money, and for the last 6 years of my life, every day, every hour, I struggled like a fish against ice, trying to swim out of a cold, dark pool of debt I hadn't dug myself out of. I had parents who I'd fervently believed from infancy loved me, well, in their own way, and a younger sister, Madison, 3 years my junior, with the eyes of an angel and a knack for getting anything she could lay her delicate hand on. From childhood, from the moment I learned to say no and Madison to say yes, our roles were written by our parents as clearly as the script of a bad play. I was the strong one, the independent one, the one who could handle anything, the one whose chin never trembled, whose hands never shook. And Madison was a fragile, delicate butterfly who needed a warm, sheltered environment, constant protection from the slightest breath of life's storms. And this sacred division meant one thing: all the problems, all the bumps and bruises were mine, while Madison basked in the rays of universal help, support, and endless indulgence. I remember how at 15 I desperately wanted a laptop for studying. Not a toy, but a tool, a window into another world. After school, I toiled away at the counter at the local grocery store, saving every penny, every bloody dollar for months, and finally bought a used model that buzzed like a swarm of angry hornets and burned on my lap if I worked on it for more than an hour. But I was immensely proud of it. It was my victory, a hard one and tormented one. I earned it. And the next morning, barely stepping into the kitchen with this humming treasure in my hands, I witnessed a scene that made my stomach churn. Mom, beaming like a Christmas tree, handed Madison a box. From it, a brand new MacBook peered out, its glossy white finish and cool metal gleaming. Brand new, not smelling of anyone else's sweat, with a cellophane film over the screen and that dazzling, mocking Apple logo. "For your school project, honey," Mom said sing-songly, stroking Madison's hair. Madison was 12. Her school project was a poster on poster board where she had to attach balloons to planets. I stood, frozen in the doorway, clutching my crackling old laptop to my chest, the deafening silence filling my ears. Not a word, not even half a word, about the blatant, screaming injustice. No one even looked away. When Madison turned 13, she approached me with that sweet, pleading smile I'd never been immune to. "Roxy, can I borrow your bike? Just for an hour, to Lisa's house and back." I said yes, of course I did, because family is sacred, right? That's what you're supposed to do. She returned it 2 days later. Or rather, she didn't return it. It simply appeared back in the yard, this time lying in a muddy puddle behind that same Lisa's house. The chain was covered in rusty corrosion like leprosy. The saddle was torn as if someone had run a knife through it, and the handlebars were twisted and bent out of shape. "She didn't do it on purpose, Roxy," Dad said wearily when I, my voice choked with tears, tried to point out this act of vandalism. "Madison didn't mean to leave it there. She just forgot. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Just fix it." After that, she always took my things. It became her unspoken right, a divinely given privilege. Dresses came back stained, books with dog-eared pages and coffee-colored rings. Jewelry vanished into the black hole of her room forever. And every breath I took, every "Mom, here she goes again," was met with the same mantra, honed over the years. "Roxy, stop overreacting. Madison didn't mean to hurt you. She was just lending you something. You need to be understanding. You need to grow up." I got into college on a partial scholarship. The rest fell on my shoulders in the form of student loans, heavy, crushing like concrete slabs. I lived at home to save money, but my parents charged me $500 a month for rent on my childhood bedroom. Madison lived there for free, of course. I toiled at 2 jobs, on weekends as a waitress in a noisy, onion-scented cafe, and on weekdays as a tutor for troublemaking school children. I hid every spare penny. Not in the bank, no, I was afraid they'd find out, but in an old box of expensive chocolates I kept on the top shelf of the closet. Paranoia? Maybe, but the survival instinct is a powerful thing. And, as it turned out later, I should have trusted it implicitly. 3 years. 3 years of austerity, of giving up everything remotely resembling joy. In the box lay $4,200, my lifeline, my ticket to freedom, the day I could take off my tiny cage. But mine. I came home from class, dead tired, and felt something before I even touched the closet. Emptiness, a chill in my chest. The box was light, unnaturally light. I tore off the lid. Inside lay only velvety brown paper, silently screaming theft. I burst into the living room, shaking like I had a fever, holding that damned empty box in my hands. They were all there. Dad with the newspaper, Mom knitting, Madison looking at her phone. She was 17. "Where's my money?" My voice was hoarse, alien. "It's gone. All of it." Mom put down her knitting needles, her gaze calm, even bored. "We used it to pay for Madison's SAT prep classes. She really needs it to get into a good college." "It's my money. I saved it for 3 years." Dad scowled at me over the top of the newspaper. "Stop being so dramatic, Roxy. Family helps family. Don't you understand? You stole from me." "We didn't steal," Mom retorted coldly. "We borrowed. When you grow up, you'll understand. Resources are shared in a family." "I never consented to this. You broke into my room and took it." Mom sighed deeply, as if I were the heaviest burden in her life. "Madison needed help, and you're strong enough to survive this small loss. It's not the end of the world." But for me, it was the end of the world. Their world. I ran away 3 months after graduation, rented that tiny cage-like apartment, and began methodically, dollar by dollar, killing off my student loans, reducing my interactions with my family to dry holiday greetings and rare, brief, forced phone calls. I worked myself to the bone, spending only on necessities, and every spare cent went toward those damned debts. And so, at 28, I finally straightened my shoulders. I made the last payment, every last penny. And with the first paycheck freed from that burden, I made a down payment on a car. A brand new silver 2023 Honda Accord. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't expensive, but it was mine. The first truly new thing in my life. Each monthly mortgage payment wasn't a burden for me, but a hymn, a small personal victory. Proof, look, I can do this myself. I don't need your stifling help. The next day, elated, I went to see my parents. The foolish, naive part of me still longed to share this moment, to finally receive their recognition. They congratulated me. They said, "You're so beautiful. We're so proud of you." All the right words. But I saw it. I saw that chill flicker in Mom's eyes, that slight tension in Dad's cheekbones. Discontent. As if my success, my independent, hard-won victory, was somehow invisibly casting a shadow on Madison, who was still torn between unfinished courses and new interests. I pretended not to notice. I told myself, "Roxy, you're being paranoid. It's your parents. They want the best for you." One morning, a few weeks later, when the air was still cool and clear and the sun was just beginning to swing its pendulum over the rooftops of Austin, I left my house to go to work. My bag was heavy on my shoulder. Lines of code I needed to bring to life were already spinning in my head, and I instinctively reached for the keychain in my pocket, that pleasant heaviness that reminded me of freedom. But the parking space in front of my driveway was empty. Utterly, utterly empty. Only a handful of fallen leaves swirled on the asphalt, marking the spot where my silver Accord should have been. I froze, blinked, then stared at the empty space again, as if I could conjure it back up with the power of my gaze. The absurd thought, what if I'd parked somewhere else yesterday, tired as I was, made me dart around the entire lot, my eyes catching familiar license plates, colors, shapes, but it was nowhere to be found. She simply didn't exist in my reality. Then panic set in, cold, sticky, constricting my throat. I called the towing company, the management company, my conversations becoming increasingly desperate and incoherent. No one knew anything. No one had seen anything. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. And then, on some primal level, I understood. I dialed my parents' number. Mom answered the second call, and her voice sounded unnaturally cheerful, almost sing-song. "Roxy, good morning, honey. What a surprise so early." "Mom?" My own voice seemed strained. "My car is gone. Someone stole it. I need to call the police, but I thought maybe you—" I didn't finish. Something in my chest snapped. "Oh, we have your car," she said, and there wasn't a hint of embarrassment in her tone, only a light, businesslike satisfaction. I froze. The world narrowed to a dot in the center of the phone screen. "What?" "Your dad and I picked it up early this morning. We used your spare key." My spare key. The one that was at the bottom of my purse. And then, like an electric shock, the memory of last night came rushing back. Mom's unexpected visit, her warm embrace, the pie from that cute bakery 2 blocks away that she'd hardly ever visit without a reason. She was bustling about in the kitchen. I turned away to put the kettle on, and her purse was lying next to mine on the chair. Now I understood. I understood why she needed to pop in with that stupid pie. It was sabotage. You took the keys from my purse yesterday." "Well, of course, we needed them to get the car." Her voice sounded as if she were explaining the obvious to a 2-year-old. "You stole my car," I whispered, and my ears began to ring. She laughed, genuinely, easily. "Roxy, don't be dramatic. We didn't steal it. We gave it to Madison. She started a new job, and it's simply impossible for her to take the bus. She needs it more than you do." "It's my car," I cried, and the windows in my mind seemed to shake. "I make payments on it every month." "We can get by without a car for a few weeks. You're resourceful," she dismissed. "But Madison really needs it now." Another voice came over the line, low and commanding. My father. He must have picked up the extension in their bedroom. "The car stays in the family, Roxy. You're overreacting. This isn't stealing." "You already stole money from me once." My voice trembled, breaking through the lump in my throat. "In college, you took all my savings to pay for Madison's classes, and now you're stealing my car." Mom sighed. That same repetitive, tired, long-suffering sigh that had driven me crazy throughout my childhood. "Don't start that again, Roxy. Madison's going through a tough time right now. She needs her family's support." And at that moment, through the fog of rage and betrayal, the stories of Madison's cars surfaced in my memory like disgusting, greasy stains. Her first car, completely destroyed 5 years ago. She ran a red light and crashed into a truck. My parents hugged her then, lamenting, "Bad luck. It happens. It can happen to anyone." Her second car, 2 years later, was smashed into pieces against a mailbox while she was scrolling through her phone feed. Dad had strictly forbidden me to bring it up. "She's already upset. Don't make it worse." Her third, just a year ago, she was pulled out of a ditch after a drunken party. Mom justified herself. "She needs our support, not condemnation. Thank God she's alive." 3 cars, 3 twisted metal hulks. And now mine, my hard one, paid for by years of hardship, my first real victory. It was simply handed over to Madison, like an old sweater you'll keep until I need it. "Madison will smash it," I said, with an icy certainty that frightened even me, just like she smashed all the others. "You're selfish, Roxy." Mom's voice grew thin and sharp as a blade. "Your sister needs help, and you can only think about yourself." "Give her a couple of weeks," Dad interjected imperiously. "She'll return the car as soon as she settles into her new job." "No, she won't. She never gives back what she borrows. Never." I screamed and broke the connection, throwing the phone on the asphalt so hard that the screen cracked. My fingers dialed 911. The voice giving the dispatcher the details sounded flat and alien. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up to the apartment complex. Officer Martinez stepped out, a woman with a serious face and attentive eyes. She was calm, professional, and listened to me without interrupting, absorbing every word, every stifled breath. I handed her all the documents, the registration in my name, the insurance in my name, the bank statements with the payment schedule. Every piece of paper screamed of ownership. "Did you give anyone permission to take your vehicle?" she asked, her gaze direct and honest. "No, no one. Last night my mother stole the spare key from my purse to give to my sister." Martinez nodded, took a photo of the empty space, disappeared into the manager's office, and returned a short time later. "The surveillance footage shows a young woman matching your description of Madison, approaching a car at 6 a.m., unlocking it, and driving away. This is motor vehicle theft," she said clearly. "I'm filing a report and putting out a search warrant for this vehicle. Theft within a family is still theft. The law makes no exceptions for relatives." As her car disappeared around the corner, I sank down onto the curb, onto the cold concrete, and stared at the empty rectangle of asphalt. What I'd just done, calling the police on my own family, was monstrous. It turned everything upside down, severed the last frayed connections, made me feel like Judas, a traitor, a monster. Waves of guilt washed over me, threatening to overwhelm me. But then I closed my eyes and pictured Madison with perfect clarity. She's sitting behind the wheel of my car, probably blasting music I never listened to, smiling as she tells her new coworkers how my parents helped me with the wheels. She acted like she deserved it, like the world should lay everything she wanted at her feet by default, while I'd spent years clawing for my right to this simple, silver thing. The phone, lying next to the cracked screen, shuddered with a flood of messages. "Mom, you called the police on your sister. What's wrong with you? You're crazy. Drop the report immediately." "Dad, Roxy, this is beyond the pale. You're tearing a family apart over some piece of hardware. Think about what you're doing." And finally, Madison. "I can't believe you did this. I need this car for work. What, are you trying to get me fired? Are you simply ruining my life out of jealousy or something?" Not a single word about how I'd get to work. Not a shadow of a doubt in my rights. Not a single sorry. Only accusations. Only demands. I ran my finger along the cold glass, looking at those 3 pop-up windows, 3 voices from the past trying to dictate my present. And I didn't respond. Not a single one. I simply rose from the curb, dusted my palms, and walked to the bus stop, feeling the guilt drain away, along with the last childish hope that someday they would see me not as a source of resources, but as a daughter, a sister, a person. The next morning, as I, exhausted from insomnia, tried to force myself to make coffee, the phone rang. Officer Martinez. Her voice was businesslike, but there was something in it that made my fingers go cold. "Miss Roxy, we've found your car. Your sister was pulled over for speeding on the freeway near Round Rock. She was speeding way beyond the limit. The vehicle has been impounded. She's here at the station now, giving a statement." I spent that evening in the impound lot, pulled up in a rented wreck that shook with every gust of wind. And when I saw my Accord parked among the other impounded cars under the bright, merciless spotlights, something inside me snapped with a quiet, final click. It wasn't my car anymore. It was a junkyard on wheels. The interior smelled of cheap hamburger, sour ketchup, and sweet, cloying soda. Wrappers, cups, empty chip bags. They were everywhere, on the seats, on the floor, stuffed in the door pockets, as if Madison had decided to have an all-day feast. A crimson lipstick stain, smeared into the upholstery, graced the passenger door, along with a smeared layer of foundation, as if she'd applied it while driving. A sticky, sugar-coated puddle of some kind of energy drink coated the center console, gluing together coins and my favorite pen. The floor mats were speckled with dirt, sand, and something resembling pine needles. The gas tank was nearly empty, the needle hovering near zero, and my emergency blanket, neatly folded in the corner of the trunk, lay crumpled on the back seat, trampled like unwanted trash. Just 8 hours. Just 8 hours she'd owned my car, my life, the product of years of suffering. And she'd destroyed it. Not smashed it, no. She'd defiled it, turned it into a personal latrine without even a shred of respect. Officer Martinez approached me. She silently looked at the open door, and her face betrayed an understanding that required no words. "People don't appreciate what they didn't have to earn," she said quietly, looking at the smudged lipstick. "We see it all the time, unfortunately." I nodded, speechless, and spent the next 2 hours desperately, almost furiously cleaning. Turpentine for stains, wet wipes, a vacuum cleaner. My hands shook not from weakness, but from impotent rage. Every crumb, every sticky drop felt like a personal insult. A week later, I sat on an uncomfortable, cold wooden bench in the hallway outside the courtroom. My parents sat across from me, forming a tight, hostile wedge. They whispered, their heads close together, and the glances they cast at me were sharp as knives, full of silent accusation and righteous anger. Madison sat between them, small and huddled, staring at the polished floor. Her leg trembled nervously, tapping a maddening rhythm. She never once looked up at me. When the hearing began, the judge, a stern woman with gray hair, called on Madison to read the statement. My sister's hands shook so hard the paper rustled like autumn leaves. Her voice, quiet and cracked, filled the silence of the courtroom. "I admit that I took my sister's car without her permission. I knew it didn't belong to me. I took it thinking my sister would forgive me, as she always did. I was wrong. I am guilty, and I apologize." It sounded like a memorized line, forced by a lawyer, devoid of any sincerity. The judge stared at her for a long moment, unblinking, and then read out the sentence. 6 months probation, a 1-year suspension of her driver's license, reimbursement for towing and impound fees. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hand, her eyes flashing with genuine suffering, as if she had been sentenced. My father clenched his jaw, and I saw his knuckles turn white. And at that very moment, they both rushed toward Madison, surrounded her, hugged her, began whispering in her ear, stroking her back, shielding her from the consequences of her actions with a tight ring of their care. They never turned around, never once glanced at me, the one whose property had been stolen, whose boundaries had been trampled. When it was all over and the room began to empty, I stood up and let them pass. Madison stood a few centimeters away from me. Her face was red and swollen from tears, her lips trembling. She slowed, her eyes darted in my direction, and for a moment I thought I saw something akin to confusion, a question flash in them. But my mother suddenly, almost roughly, grabbed her by the elbow and pulled her forward, toward the exit. And I heard, clear as a shard of ice, her whisper cutting right into Madison's ear. "Don't apologize to her. It's not your fault. She provoked this." The courtroom door slammed behind them with a dull, final thud. And at that moment, something inside me quieted. The last echoes of rage faded. The sharp pain of betrayal receded. Even the acrid guilt that had been gnawing at me from within all these days subsided. A strange, pure, serene confidence took their place. I had done the right thing. Not comfortable, not family-like, but the right thing. Stepping outside to my now twice-tortured car, I climbed behind the wheel and ran my palm over the cool surface of the steering wheel, now free of its sticky residue. The car was mine again. But more importantly, my life was finally, completely mine. My boundaries were defined and protected by law. My choice was mine. And I swore to myself that no one would ever take anything from me again. In the following weeks, the calls stopped. The barrage of angry and guilty messages dried up. The pressure, that suffocating, familiar pressure from childhood, sorry, forget, be a good girl, simply evaporated, leaving behind a lightness that at first made my head spin. I silently, without announcement, moved to a new apartment in West Austin. I didn't leave a new address. I changed my phone number, entering it only in the numbers of people whose respect for me I didn't question. My days took on a new, calm rhythm. Quiet mornings with coffee, long walks without looking back, evenings filled only with music or silence that demanded nothing of me. For the first time in my life, I took a deep breath and realized that this feeling was freedom. The first months at my new job were strange. I kept expecting a catch, waiting for a phone call, an unexpected visit, a familiar wave of duty and guilt to wash over me. But nothing happened. I woke up when I wanted. I ate what I wanted. I returned to a house where silence reigned, a peace that belonged only to me. No one took my things without asking. No one called my healthy boundaries selfish. No one took anything. It felt like I'd finally learned to breathe, and the air was sweet and clean. Even work became easier, without the constant background noise of family drama, without having to waste mental energy waiting for the next blow. I could immerse myself completely in my code. My manager noticed my increased focus. I was trusted with more complex, interesting projects, given more responsibility. It turns out I was a great specialist when I didn't have to spend half my energy putting out fires I didn't start. I began to bond with my colleagues. They became friends, real friends, the kind who invited me to parties and actually showed up, who lent me money and paid it back on time, who asked, "Can I borrow your pen?" Simple, ordinary things that had never been ordinary in my past. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about my parents. I wondered if they finally realized what they'd done. Did they miss me? Or were they just angry that I was no longer the convenient, ever-present solution to all of Madison's problems? I didn't call. I didn't write. I didn't send holiday cards. I gave them my entire childhood and the best years of my youth. That was more than enough. My new apartment had a small balcony overlooking a green courtyard park. I loved sitting there in the evenings with a cup of tea, watching people walk their dogs and children scream on the swings. Ordinary, peaceful life flowed around me, and now I was a part of it. Not a taskmaster, not responsible for other people's chaos, not strong and independent against her will. Just a person, Roxy, a woman who had finally started living her own life. One Saturday morning, about 8 months after the courtroom door slammed shut, separating my past from my present, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, immersed in the aroma of fresh espresso and the quiet hum of other people's conversations. That's when I ran into Rachel, a woman from my old neighborhood, whose house stood just a few yards from my parents'. "Roxy, oh my God, I haven't seen you in ages!" Her voice, too loud for the morning silence, cut through the air, and before I could react, she was hugging me, smelling of familiar perfume and a nostalgia I didn't share. "How are you? Your mom said you moved, but she doesn't seem to know where exactly." "I'm fine," I said, carefully extricating myself from her embrace. "In fact, everything's really good." Rachel's smile faltered slightly, her eyes becoming searching, almost pitying. "I heard about that incident with the car and the trial. It must have been terrible for you all." "It was necessary," I replied evenly, without provocation, simply stating the fact. She paused, her fingers fiddling with the strap of her purse. "You still sued your sister," she whispered, as if she were referring to something shameful, clearly trying to evoke in me the same guilt she knew from family situations. "She stole my car," I said, slowly and clearly. "I reported the crime." "That's how it works in a world where laws exist." "But family is family, right?" she insisted, a hint of my mother's tone creeping into her voice, the same one that had hammered that mantra into me for years. "I'm sure if you just talk to them." "I'm not interested in talking to them," I snapped, my coldness finally getting through to her. Rachel looked away, embarrassed. "Your mother, she's really upset. She keeps telling everyone how much she misses you." I took a sip of coffee, letting its bitter taste bring me back to reality. If she missed me, she wouldn't have chosen Madison over me my whole life. She wouldn't have stolen my college savings. She wouldn't have snatched the keys from my bag and given them to my sister without asking me. She wouldn't... I stopped, seeing her face contort with confusion and slight horror. "You didn't know about all this, did you?" No, of course not," she muttered. "Most people don't know," I said, and there was no offense in my voice, only a tired statement. They just see my mother crying because her adult daughter won't talk to her. They don't see the 30 years that preceded those tears. 30 years of systematic deprivation. Everything. Rachel nodded slowly, and something akin to insight, mingled with discomfort, flashed in her eyes. I'm sorry, that sounds very hard. It was, I agreed, but it's better now. We chatted for a few more minutes about something insignificant, the weather, the new cafe on her street, before she left with an awkward smile. I sat there, finishing my cold coffee and pondering her words. My mother. She told people she missed me. She masterfully rewrote the story, turning herself into a suffering mother victim, not an accomplice to theft and emotional abuse. This didn't surprise me. It was her favorite tactic. But what struck me was the complete absence of the previous pain. There was no trepidation, no desire to scream, justify, or prove anything. There was only a calm confidence. Let her tell her side of the story to anyone. I knew the truth. My silence, my integrity was the answer. And that was enough. A year had passed since the trial. It was an ordinary evening. I returned from work, tired but satisfied, and checking the mailbox in the lobby of my safe, faceless building, I felt a lonely envelope among the advertising brochures and bills. There was no return address, but the handwriting. I recognized the handwriting instantly, from that very first glance, as if a jolt had struck a nerve. Madison. I stood in the quiet, neon-lit hallway for who knows how long, holding that white rectangle in my hands as if charged with some unknown energy. One part of me, the disciplined, cautious one, demanded that I toss it immediately in the trash, unopened, not giving the past a single chance to seep into my new, clean world. The other part, the one that still held somewhere deep the picture of the little girl with pigtails with whom I had once shared a room, stirred dully, wondering, what could she have written? What could I say after all this? The envelope gave way to the knife with a slight rustle. Inside was a single piece of paper, covered in Madison's sprawling, nervous handwriting, the same one I remembered from birthday cards that always seemed bland, and from school projects for which she'd always gotten credit, even though I'd done most of the work. Roxy, I'm not writing this to make excuses or apologize. I'm in therapy. Yeah, imagine that. I'm learning interesting things like boundaries, responsibility, and how to live without constantly taking things from other people. It's damn hard. I didn't realize how much my whole life had been built on taking until I couldn't do it anymore. I know I hurt you, not just with the car, with everything, with the bike, with the clothes, with the money, with all the things you mentioned in court that I never even thought about before. I kept taking, and it never occurred to me what it cost you. Now I'm trying to be a better person. I don't know if I ever will, but I'm trying. I'm sorry. I know it won't fix anything. I just wanted you to know. I finally understand what I did. Even if you never forgive me, you deserve to know that I finally understand. Madison. I read the letter twice. First quickly, scanning the lines for manipulation, the old victim game. Then slowly, taking in every word. Then I carefully folded the piece of paper, returned it to the envelope, and took it to the apartment. There, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, where I kept old warranty cards and unnecessary papers, and put the envelope there. I closed the drawer. I didn't reply. Maybe that makes me callous. Maybe there was a set of rules somewhere where I should have written back, acknowledged her feat in her journey to recovery, praised her for her therapy. But I didn't feel obligated. I owed her nothing. She'd spent 25 years taking me piece by piece. An apology, even if sincere, and perhaps it was this time, couldn't undo that. They didn't return the stolen money, didn't restore the damaged things, didn't rewrite a childhood in which I was supposed to be protected, not strong. I believed she was trying. Deep down, I even wished her luck on this journey, but only for her own sake. That didn't mean I was obligated to open the door and let her back into my life while she figured it all out. Many believe that forgiveness is a sacred duty, that you should always forgive your family, no matter what they've done, because blood is thicker than water. But I realized something different. Forgiveness isn't an externally imposed obligation. It's a personal, profound choice. And I made my choice. Not to forgive. Not because I still harbor anger, that's long gone, but because I've finally stopped being that person who gives everything, sacrifices everything, who can handle anything. I've stopped being who my family expected me to be. I've become simply myself. And that, being simply myself, without the titles of strong or offended, was more than enough. The letter remained in the drawer. Occasionally, I'd stumble across it while rummaging around for my charger or paper clips. It no longer evoked pain or anger. It was just a piece of paper, an artifact from another life. I went to work, came home, sat on the balcony, and watched the evening fall. I lived a quiet, private, peaceful life, and not once, not for a single moment, did I regret leaving the people who had spent 30 years taking everything they could from me. 2 years after that court hearing, which became a watershed in my life, the world finally decided to give me what I deserved. I got a promotion. Senior programmer with my own small team of 3 talented people who saw me not as a resource, but as a mentor. A better salary, excellent benefits, and most importantly, that pure, unadulterated respect I'd worked to earn on my own my entire adult life. I celebrated alone, intentionally. I went to dinner at an elegant, slightly noisy restaurant in downtown Austin, where I sat not at a table, but at the bar, a place made for those who wait for no one but themselves. I ordered an expensive burgundy, which I chose myself without checking the price tag, and ate a medium-rare steak as slowly as I wanted, savoring each incredibly tender bite. No one extended a fork to just taste my plate. No one brought up the subject of temporary difficulties, followed by a request to borrow until payday. There was only me, only my victory, my triumph. The bartender, a man with kind eyes and graying temples, asked if I was expecting anyone. No, I said, and the smile that escaped my lips was light and sincere. Just celebrating my promotion. He smiled back, and a minute later another glass of the same wine appeared in front of me. On the house. Congratulations. You look happy. And I was happy. Truly, deeply, quietly happy, as I don't think I'd ever been. That same year, I made the final payment on my car. No more monthly obligations. No more stress about not making it on time. It belonged to me, free and clear. Every time I got behind the wheel, I felt not just comfort, but a surge of pride. Not ostentatious, but deeply personal. It was mine. I deserved it. I protected it. Inside, if you looked closely, you could still see the ghostly traces of those 8 hours of devastation. A barely noticeable stain on the passenger door trim, a tiny scratch on the plastic console. I'd cleaned most of it, but I'd left these little things intentionally. They were my quiet, private reminders that I'd drawn a line, that I stood up for myself, and that no one else crossed that line. I created new traditions for myself that weren't tied to duty or expectations. A Sunday farmer's market where I bought peaches and fresh bread simply because I wanted to. A Thursday book club where we debated plots, not family dramas. Monthly hikes in the Greenbelt with colleagues who became friends. We shared water and laughed, not problems and recriminations. A life built on what brought joy, not on obligations to those who didn't appreciate that joy. Sometimes people asked about family. Small talk with new acquaintances, an attempt to get to know each other better. Do you see your parents often? No, we don't talk. The inevitable pause, the sympathetic look. Oh, I'm sorry. That must be hard. And my answer, always the same, calm and final. Actually, it's better this way. Most backed down. The few who persisted received a polite but firm explanation. Some relationships only become healthy at a distance. Infinitely. My calm on this matter was so obvious that it was disarming. For them, it was a tragedy. For me, the best decision I ever made. 3 years after changing my number, late one evening, as I was reading on the couch, my phone vibrated from an unfamiliar number. My hand instinctively reached out to ignore it, but some inner impulse, a mixture of curiosity and an old, almost atrophied vigilance, forced me to lift the receiver to my ear. Hello? The silence in response was thick, meaningful. And then, a voice that broke through the dam of memories built over years. Roxy? It's Dad. My stomach clenched into an icy lump. How did you get this number? Your cousin Emily. She thought we should be able to contact you in case of an emergency. I made a mental note to talk to Emily that morning about boundaries, betrayal, and what an emergency really is. What do you want? My voice was flat, empty. Your mother isn't doing well. Depression. The doctors say she needs family support. His voice lacked its former authority, only a tired, hackneyed, manipulative tone. She has Madison, I snapped. Madison's trying, but Mom misses you. She wants to see you. No. Roxy, she's your mother. You can't just up and leave her. The irony of that phrase was so deafening that I almost laughed into the phone. They'd been emotionally abandoning me since childhood, but I was the one to blame for the breakup, simply by not offering my back. She left me first, I said, every syllable sharp as a blade. Every time she chose Madison, every time she took my things and gave them to her. Every time she told me, don't be dramatic, when I was hurt. She left me again and again for 30 years, both of you. We did everything we could. We tried to help you both. No, you helped Madison. I was expected to handle everything on my own because I was strong. Well, I'm still strong, and I use that strength to stay away from people who hurt me. You're selfish, he hissed, and his hiss conveyed all his helplessness. I'm healthy. That's a big difference. I hung up, blocked the number. Emily's call, where I explained, without raising my voice, that her help was a stab in the back, and that respecting my choices was the only help I needed. For several hours after that conversation, I felt a strange tremor inside, the ghost of old guilt, the shadow of past patterns, trying to break through the new foundation. I simply sat with this feeling. I didn't push it away, didn't argue with it. I let it be, watching it like a storm outside the window. And by evening, it was gone, leaving no trace. They couldn't bring me back just because they finally needed me. I was no longer a resource, a backup plan, or a strong person capable of solving other people's problems. I was simply a person in whose life there was no room for them. 4 years after everything that began with an empty parking space, I was offered a job in Denver. A better position, a significant salary increase, new mountains, literally and figuratively. I accepted without hesitation. While packing my cozy apartment, I came across that very same desk drawer. The envelope with Madison's letter lay there, slightly yellowed. I took it out, held it in my hands, feeling the weight of those few grams of paper, which had once seemed unbearable. And then, without thinking, I tore it in half and threw it in the trash. I no longer needed to hold on to it. I no longer needed reminders of battles I had already won. I was moving forward in every sense. Denver greeted me with cold, crystal-clear winters and incredibly bright, clear summers. I bought a small house on the western outskirts with a panoramic view of snow-capped peaks. I made new friends, fell in love, broke up, lived. I built a life that was 100% mine. Sometimes, late at night, looking at the stars above the mountains, I thought of them. I wondered if Madison had truly changed, if my parents understood what they had lost, if they thought of me the same way I did, on the edge of my consciousness, without pain, of them. But these were just thoughts, curiosity, not melancholy. A postcard from the past I don't want to reread. I learned the most important lesson from them, even though they never intended to teach me. I learned that I don't owe anyone my suffering, that I can choose who has access to my life, that blood relationship isn't an excuse for bad behavior. I realized that I'm worth protecting, that I'm worth cherishing, that I'm worth choosing. And I chose myself. They always told me I was strong and independent, using that as an excuse to give me less. But in one thing, they were profits. I was strong. Strong enough to survive without them. Strong enough to build a life on my own terms. Strong enough to say no, and for that no to mean something. Strong enough to be happy. And I was happy. Without reservations. My car, that same silver Accord I'd fought so desperately for, still served me faithfully. I drove it to work every day, in the summer with the wind blowing through the open windows, in the winter with the cabin warmed by the warmth. My car, my life, my choice. No one had ever taken anything from me again. And that was exactly what I wanted.